Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to My Therapist Needs a Therapist. I'm Alicia Freeman, licensed professional counselor, and we have.
Hi, I'm Tamika Thompson, the other licensed professional counselor. Welcome, guys.
Welcome back to another episode. I wish we need some drums, don't we?
Yep, music, something.
Well, first off, we want to say thank you all for all of the support and the love and the comments and the likes and the subscribes. We are so excited to just get the feedback
Wow.
that we've gotten so far. And we've gotten a lot of comments on different topics that people want us to talk about. And we're just excited to be here. And we're definitely going to talk about one of the topics that we heard about on today.
Yes, and again, guys, thank you so much for all the feedback, the comments that we received on the first podcast. We really felt the love. I was super excited to read that. So, we just want to roll in today. And again, like I say, we really enjoyed it. We're going to be talking about in this podcast anxiety, stress, and burnout, what that looks like, what that means, and what to look for. So, we're ready. I hope you guys are ready too.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started, check in with us, Tamika. Tell us what's been going on with you.
Oh my gosh, busy, 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 but it's been a good busy. Just talking to more people. I did a training a couple of weeks ago with some doulas, and that was amazing experience. I was super excited about that. Had a lot going on. Was nervous going in there, but those women are amazing. Just what they're doing for the community, their community. It got me going, got me excited. So that's what I've been having going on, plus work, plus family, plus sports, everything and stuff. So I'm busy. How about you?
Girl, I've been on the sick and shut in list this week. I have been sick all week. I've still been working and whatnot, not as much as I usually do, but it's been a rough week, and y'all probably can hear it in my voice. I am here for y'all. So y'all make sure y'all like this video, comment, get more people to subscribe, share our stuff, y'all, because your girl been sick. And so I've been trying to get better just to record our podcast.
Mhm,
But I'm glad I'm
mhm.
here. I'm excited about today's topic. And do you want to introduce it and why we decided to go with this topic today?
Yes, would love to introduce it. Again, we got a lot of feedback and comments on our first podcast. We had one of our subscribers that asked if you could talk about anxiety, burnout, and stress and what that looks like. That is one of our topics we talk about all the time. So I was excited to read that first of all. I was ready to dive right into that. So hope this is what you guys were looking for and asking for. And so please keep commenting and giving us feedbacks because we are going to be talking about that in upcoming podcasts, different things that you guys are concerned about, want more education on. So again, we really appreciate that comment that we received.
Absolutely. And it's important that to note that yes, we are talking about all three because they don't necessarily coincide all the time, but one can lead to the other, especially stress and burnout can lead to anxiety or
Mhm.
prolonged anxiety, right? So for those of you all who don't know what anxiety is or what it looks like, some examples of anxiety is that maybe you feel uneasy. Maybe you feel stressed or worried all the time. Maybe you are more apprehensive in making decisions because you're concerned of how someone might respond or what might happen if you decide to like go in and make that final decision, right? It looks different for everyone and it feels different for everyone. People may hold more anxiety in like their hands or their stomach, or their breathing rate might increase, right? So it's important to distinguish that not only does it look different for everyone, but there's also different levels of anxiety. You have your low levels of anxiety, you have moderate, and you also have the more severe anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. One of the things too, I want to um, bring to the table is talk more about, or highlight more about, is the body. Our body holds anxiety and it looks differently for people. There's some things that we have like racing thoughts, and you're like, why am I constantly thinking about that? That's a sign of anxiety. Biting on your fingers, tapping. So when you're doing something excessively, your body is telling you like, hey, I got a little bit of anxiety, we're needing to do something about it. And sometimes we do it involuntarily. So those are the things I just wanted to recap on just a little bit, for our audience.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did, because what I was thinking about, and we talked about this in the first episode, was that when I was younger, I didn't know what was going on with me. And one of those things was anxiety,
Yeah.
which when I look back, I experienced anxiety very young. I used to bite my nails all the time. I started singing at a very young age, but I did not want to sing in front of people where I could not even like get the words out because my voice would shake so bad. And
Yeah.
no one told me, like, Alicia, and it's not
Mhm.
the stage fright, it was pure anxiety that I
Yeah.
experienced. I remember just sitting in a chair when we're with at family gatherings, and I would just be sitting there like shaking my foot and leg. Like
Mhm.
that's how bad it was. And I didn't know until I was much older, like this is what's going on with you, and there's ways to work through that.
Exactly, exactly. I think for me, I started experiencing with it a little bit older, and my stomach would always be upset. And I'm like, oh, I guess this wasn't the right food for me. But it was like when I was doing like big events, like sporting events, I would always get nauseous or my stomach would always get upset. And that was a form of anxiety for me, and that my body is telling me, you need to breathe, you need to slow down, whatever your mantra is before you go into something, say that so you can slow yourself down. So those are the things that I was experiencing and still kind of experience to this day.
Absolutely, yeah, same. Especially when it comes to like big presentation, I'm like, oh, my
Yep.
stomach hurt. I'm not eating anything today, just drinking
Yes.
water.
Yes. Yes.
But the beauty of it now is, for me at least, it's like that first minute I get nervous about it, and then I'm like, okay, get it together, take a breath. We've done this before, right? It's about
Mhm.
like, preparing yourself mentally, but also recognizing like this is what's going on with you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So the person who made the comment about anxiety, did he give an example of what was going on with him?
He didn't give an example, but I do know this person personally, and some things that we used to do, or that he would used to express with his job, was anxiety about the unknown, or feeling like he was never doing enough. So he felt like I gotta always be doing something. And if I'm not doing something, or if I'm taking a 15-minute break, he would feel guilty about it. So those are some of the things that caused him anxiety and stress too, and I think that led to the burnout, of that, is like, I'm always doing these things, and I'm always feeling like I'm not measuring up, and he is a Black man working in a society field, or at least that employer where he was surrounded by a lot of white people. So he felt like he just needed to always do more and stuff. And I think for us, we always feel like we need to do more, and maybe our counterpart is not doing as much as we are, but they're getting more accolades, or they're getting more raises and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that he expressed to me in the past.
Mm, that's so interesting. And, there's so many reasons as to why people experience anxiety. And I think one that you talked about, kind of mentioned briefly, was your constant exposure to things that cause you anxiety too. When we talk about like law enforcement or lawyers or doctors, therapists, right?
Yeah.
All the people who have direct exposure, or we'll call it secondary exposure as well,
Mhm.
vicarious
Mhm.
trauma, right? To people who experience trauma, and we have to hear it over and over, and we're in some ways reliving it with them as well. That can also cause anxiety, because there's that fear of like the unknown. What's going to happen to me? Is my child safe? Am I safe? Even when I walk out the front door of my own home.
Right, exactly. And I would love for you, Alicia, to talk a little bit more about secondary trauma, because I think our society experience a lot of secondary trauma, what that looks like for someone that is exposed to secondary trauma.
So let's give an example. So I work in a field where I'm working with lawyers a lot. And so
Mhm,
some examples that I always give them of vicarious trauma or secondary trauma is working with a client who was in a horrific accident, right? Where there might be bodily harm, where that they can't recover from, maybe loss of limbs or even loss of a significant other, right? And so when you're working with that client, you have to hear that story in order to plead their case in court, right? So you have
mhm,
to hear it over and over and hear the details and relive it in some ways because now you have these depictions in your mind of what actually happened that day. And so when you're dealing with that every single week, if you're like a criminal law or trial attorney or any of those things, you're hearing these stories all the time. And so over time, you almost take them on as your own, like you experienced that when that wasn't the case.
right.
And then if you give another example of let's say a doctor who works in the trauma ward and constantly seeing people who are maybe on the brink of dying, actually dying, or have these traumatic experiences as well. When you're exposed to that all the time, a lot
Mhm,
of times people may see it as, oh, I'm becoming numb to it, but really what you're doing is trying to like block out these traumas. But in other ways, you're kind of like supplementing that in other parts of your life. So now
right.
you're more on guard. Maybe you're more anxious, maybe you're more or less empathetic to people, right?
Mhm.
All those can stem from that exposure to that vicarious, that secondary trauma.
Right, right. Another thing that sticks out for me, I really appreciate you giving those examples. And you brought this up briefly, was talking about the trauma of police officers and men, specifically Black men. But I wonder the other side of that. Of the police officers, what type of secondary trauma that they go through to make them uneasy around certain races or certain people and stuff, that they feel like, I have to be more aggressive, or I have to be, not as accepting of this person. So I wonder what type of secondary trauma that they're experiencing in their life, and hoping that they're getting the support and help that they need to be more of an advocate support for people in different communities.
Well, it's interesting, and there's definitely like a double entendre because, with me being married to someone in law enforcement, I've seen multiple levels of his experience with being in law enforcement.
Mhm,
And he went from being on the roads, being exposed to just random drunk racist people on the road to moving up in rank. And the levels of like politics is the main thing, right? Yes,
mhm,
we look at it because when we talk about law enforcement, there's still that small percentage of minorities who actually hold higher levels of um, roles in the
mhm,
field, right? But it's like we talk about race, but what it really is politics. It's really about like, who do you
mhm.
know and will they help you get there? Or maybe that person didn't like one little single thing that you did. And so because of that, they know someone and that's going to hold you back, right? But I also
Right.
have friends who are married to law enforcement. And I think in all being Black, and only one I know that whose husband, she's Black, but her husband is white, but all of their experiences are different, but the
Yeah.
politics is still there.
Yes.
And I think it's important to just note, like, not only are they being exposed to people who are unsafe,
Mhm,
but then as Black men, they themselves feel unsafe because they're in a role where people see them in two ways. They're seen as heroes, but then they're also seen as traitors to their own community because they're working in a field where we
yeah.
know in the last what's been we've seen more of it in the
Mhm,
last few years of Black people being marginalized and killed by people in law enforcement. So it's
Mhm.
difficult to really like narrow down where the real issue is, because it's almost as if they have to create their own community outside of the communities that they're within, whether it's with work or their Black communities, because it's like no one understands exactly what they're going through as well.
Exactly. And that leads into like our third part of our discussion is burnout, is you're constantly dealing with the stressors at work. So you have to put almost like a mask on at work. I have to be this certain person at work. I'm this certain person in the community. I'm this certain person at home. So that in itself is exhausting, causes anxiety, causes stress, and then leading to burnout. So how do we look at decreasing that burnout? Yes, we're two Black women, and we're talking about what the Black community looks like, but how do we get also people from different cultures, different races to be more understanding, empathetic, um, and wanting to learn more about how they can be better supports advocates for not only for themselves, but people of different races and stuff. And maybe that can decrease some of the burnout that we're experiencing, or we can get away from, oh, we got to hire this person because we only have one Black person in this office or something like that. How do we get away from things like
Well, it's
that?
so interesting because Texas has now passed this law, and we're hoping it doesn't stay, but it looks like it's going to stay, that colleges can no longer admit students based off of race, meaning,
Right.
you know, it's it's never, it's no longer the focus of we only have 1%, so how do we increase that? It's strictly off of numbers, which it affects a lot of people in a negative way, right? Some people see it as, oh, this is a positive, this evens the playing field. But going back to what you said, you asked, how do we get more people to advocate? It really starts with the person. It starts with the individual, even knowing, like, as simple as, what is your baseline?
Mhm.
What is your normal baseline when you are navigating life healthily? When you feel good, when you're happy, when you are at least okay, what does that baseline look for you? Because if you don't recognize when there's a change from your baseline, you won't recognize when it's time to maybe make some adjustments or ask for help.
Mhm.
So, in order to be an advocate for other people, you will have to be an advocate for yourself first.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't, I want people to really understand is our body tells us when something is going on before it connects with our mind. So either you start to put these things, these tools into place before your body shuts down. It says, like, I've had enough. So we have to prepare ourselves, get to the point where we're not feeling so much anxiety. And don't get us wrong, everybody has anxiety, everybody has some form of anxiety. It's how you work through it. It's
Mhm.
how you work through it. That is the biggest part of it. Do you find the tools, do you find the strategies to be able to work through those things? First, recognize you know so
And
that's
like you
things
said,
I'm thinking
in order
of.
to recognize, you have to pay attention to your body or
Yes.
pay attention to your thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking, why am I ruminating on this all the time? Why am I worried about this all the time? Why
Mm-hmm.
does my back hurt all the time and my stomach is bothering me more than it normally does? Why is it that when I eat something, like, I feel nauseous every time? Is
Mm-hmm.
it because of what I ate, or is it because there's something deeper that's going on with me?
Yeah, yeah. And talking to someone too, it's hard for us to recognize things within ourselves unless we're kind of taught those things. But talking to someone and saying, hey, I'm feeling this way. What are you thinking about that? Even if you're not comfortable talking to a therapist yet, talk to a family member that helps you kind of open up like your thoughts more and say, maybe there's something I do need to get support with. Again, there's nothing wrong with getting that support from somebody in some form or fashion. And again, I think it decreases your stress overall when you have an outlet.
Absolutely. So first, couple things I want to address because you said talk to a family member. Let's add that you can trust, okay? Because not every family member that
Preach.
maybe you open up to is trustworthy. And I mean, like, won't go and talk to someone else about the conversation that you
Mhm.
had with them, right? But even if it's not a family member, find a peer, find a support group. There's so many options out there now, which is the beauty of talking about mental health, because more people want to help because this conversation is more relevant now. So yes, find someone that you can trust, that you can talk to.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
I
that's
want to
so important,
reiterate
right?
that too.
Community is important, but it doesn't
Yes,
mean that, everybody is safe to talk to. Because you
exactly.
don't want that experience to be where you go and talk to someone feeling like you trust them, and then they say something to someone else, you feel betrayed, then you
Mhm.
just shut down, and that just make you feel more anxious in the end.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What do you think about for us to not just for us, just for our audience, is ways to decrease burnout? Burnout, kind of compassion fatigue too. I think compassion fatigue leads up to burnout. And just kind of a brief like overview of what compassion fatigue, you're feeling like you kind of get irritated with the population that you're working with. You're not feeling as sympathetic or empathetic towards that population. You're feeling like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to work with them. There could be some animosity, a little bit with compassion fatigue, and just feeling like this is not for you. Some people go through compassion fatigue with nurses, go through that, case managers, mental health professionals, therapists, and stuff. You just get to the point like where in sometimes there's a little bit of maybe countertransference or judgment within there with the compassion fatigue. But me saying all that doesn't mean that you can't step out of that. You can't step out of stress. You can't step out of anxiety. You can't step out of burnout. You can't step out of compassion fatigue. Recognizing it and putting things into place to help you start to have that. And it might not be the people you're working with, it might be the environment that you're in. So maybe changing that environment. There's different things to look at. I think for us, we always like, oh my God, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. I don't want to be here anymore. But it might be the coworker that you're working with.
Yeah.
It might be the boss that you have. You might not feel supported. So there are different things to look at.
Well, and I think you actually answered the question, because I was going to say, like, add something to the mix, right? When you're doing the same thing over and over and over, you have a higher chance or a higher likelihood of experiencing burnout, because
Mhm.
you're doing it nonstop. Probably 80% of the people that's going to watch our videos don't use their vacation time. Yeah, Tamika. Tamika was just talking about before we hit record that she needed a vacation. So
Yes.
use that vacation time, Tamika. But in all seriousness, like, take that vacation time, put something in the mix, whether that's volunteering or even like get a massage, going to the spa twice a month, like whatever that looks like for you that is going to relax you. You want to do the opposite of what you normally do. If
Yeah,
you know that working is causing you to burn out, then do something that's not work related.
exactly. Very, very true. And the biggest thing is, why do we feel guilty about taking vacation? Why do we feel guilty when we're sick and that we're not going to work? Look at things like that.
Well,
Look
that's opening up a whole nother like can of
at,
everything, because if we really want to break that down, that goes back to our upbringing, right?
yes.
And how we learn to love, how we learn to work, how we learn to grieve. All those things are learned behaviors that we learn
Mhm.
very early in age. And so, depending on how people responded, right, when we didn't
Mhm.
do certain things, or when we did do certain things, like if a person only received praise when they did something good, right, then that's what they're going to continue to seek throughout their life. And then the times where they're not doing it, they're either not receiving the praise or they're receiving the opposite, right? And
Yeah.
so, this is therapy. This is why it's important to get to the
Mhm.
root cause, right?
Mhm.
To get to
Mhm.
the root
Yeah.
cause.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself like questioning why you're experiencing that guilt, even as a therapist, and I want to go back to this briefly when we talked about vicarious trauma, like if you find yourself when you're working with the client and certain things that they're talking about is making you think of your own things in the middle of that session, you probably need to check in with yourself or check in with the supervisor or someone to like talk through that and make sure that you're not experiencing countertransference, but you're also like in a safe place to where you can still work with that client. Or if you
Yeah.
can't work with that client, like you need to refer. But if you
Yeah.
find yourself like having those ruminating thoughts in sessions, or find yourself like taking that client home with you, or you feel like you're doing extra work for this client and different things like that, then that's time that you need to check in with yourself.
Exactly. And I want to take just a small step back, even before you're talking to a client. Like if you see a client come up on your caseload, or if you're working with a patient, or if you have to talk to a certain person and you have this feeling of dread
Mm.
of, I don't want to see this person, or I hope this person no shows, or I hope this patient has checked out today and stuff, not checked out expired, but like checked out of the
Yeah.
hospital and stuff, and stuff. But, if they checked out and you feel like, "Ugh, I just don't want to look at that," and figure out, why are you feeling this way? Is it reminding you of something? Is it causing some type of trauma, or reliving some type of trauma within your life? You have to recognize those things, take a step back. And I
Or
always tell
even
people, check yourself.
further back,
Mhm.
if you find yourself waking up in the morning and say, I do not want to go to work. Why is that?
Yeah.
Especially if you're in a helping field, right?
Mhm.
And you find yourself, you said to yourself, oh, I got into this because I want to help people. And yet the thought of helping people is dreadful to you.
Yes.
Maybe you need to rethink like the avenue in which you're helping people, right? Maybe
And I
you
want
don't need
to
to be on the front line.
Exactly. And I want to say that is so 100% true. But we all have that feeling of not wanting to be at work. We all have the feeling like, I don't want to do this today. So there
True.
might be some time where
But
you
this is
need
when
to
you
take
talked
care of
about
yourself.
like coworkers or supervisor, right?
Mhm.
That's one thing, but when we're talking about like you don't want to work with the clients and
Yeah.
you don't want to do the work, that's
Yeah.
something totally different. That's
Yeah.
something that's going on internally with you.
Yeah, and you can look at that stuff. And again, it might be that time where you need to take some time to rethink what you're doing and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a time for you to take care of yourself and say, like, hey, I'm having a hard time. Why am I having a hard time? I always tell people to, whenever you're thinking about things, write it down, because our thoughts are just going, going, going. Write it down, go back a day or two later and read what you were writing and see if there's something that you're like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this for a while and I just didn't recognize it. So that's important to do.
So we've talked about some things that people can do, writing it down, right? Journaling. We also talk about recognizing like what your baseline is and what those changes are, noticing the signs in your body and in your mind. What are a few more things that people can do to help manage like that anxiety and stress, as well as burnout?
Yes. And guys, I know this is more of a serious topic, but we're doing this to for help for you to make those changes, and also for us to start to make changes within ourselves. But some of the other things that you can do is being outside. That is extremely important. Getting that is vitamin D, getting that vitamin D, being outside, getting the sun, and taking some time for you. Meditation is also important, and meditation can look like listening to music.
Mm.
Meditation can look like just going out to your backyard. It can look like taking a bath and stuff. You need that time to really think about things. And if you find yourself excessively like ruminating on stuff too, exercise can be important. Like, get out there, get that energy kind of out and stuff. So those are some of the little small little things that you can do that are easy for you.
But you said take time to think about things, but also take time to not think about
True,
things too.
true.
Because this is an example of when you know you have maybe moderate to higher levels of stress, if you can't sit still for 5 minutes without thinking of something,
Yeah.
probably need to check in with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Figure out
Hmm.
what's really going on. Why is it that I have these rapid thoughts all the time?
Hmm.
But yes, I agree with all that. Going for a walk, um, cooking. right? Cooking is very therapeutic for me.
If you
Listen,
can cook.
I mean, maybe you want to learn how to cook, okay? Maybe you're tired of learning the biscuits, okay? Maybe you want to go on YouTube and look up a quick
Right?
biscuit recipe to impress your family. That's what. I don't know. Maybe that's a new challenge, though. That's something new that you can introduce into your life, is that I don't know how to do these things, but maybe I'll make this my new hobby and figure out how to do it. But hobbies, singing,
Yeah.
going to the movies is another one for me. Like, I don't have to talk to anybody. I could just go to the movies by myself, eat my popcorn, maybe drink a wine, maybe drink a wine, maybe drink wine or a margarita. You never know, right? Depending on the movie. Probably not if it's a scary movie. I'm not trying to be intoxicated watching a scary movie.
I'll do that one. I haven't built up to going to the movies by myself because I love going to movies. I feel like I always want somebody there, probably because I like to talk. So I'm talking through my movies. I'm
I
one of
can't go
those
to the movies
people.
with you.
Oh, come on.
Watch the movie, girl. I don't know what's gonna happen next.
Did
Sit
you
down.
hear that? Why's she over there doing that? That's me.
See, I'm gonna have to just go by myself. This is why we go to the restaurant and eat queso instead of going to the movies.
I'm gonna get you out of that. I'm like, Alicia, I know you hear me.
But I hope that someone was at least one person, right? That's what's important to me, that at least one person can take away something from this video. That if you want a second part of this, if you want us to go more in detail on any of the things that we addressed today, please comment below. Even if you don't and you just enjoyed this video or this episode, comment below, like our video, continue to share, subscribe, all those good things. We really want to reach the masses. We really want to get out there, connect with more mental health professionals or just our everyday people, right? We need y'all, and so hopefully y'all need us too. But we
Exactly.
appreciate everyone's time. Anything else you want to add, Tamika?
Just same again, we really appreciate you guys. Our title, My Therapist Needs a Therapist. It is because we are authentic. We do what we do to help people. And we also are people too and stuff. We like to have fun. We like to do different things and stuff like that. But we work our tails off with the person that is in front of us. So, and also too, with this podcast, we want to connect with people. So again, like Alicia said, please comment, send us your feedbacks and stuff. If there's a topic that is like resonating with you, put it in there and we will talk about it.
Yes, we are listening. We have a whole
Mhm.
list of topics that you all have
Yes.
already shared with us that we plan to get to in the future. Um, and yeah, we appreciate you all's time. Thank you for tuning in for another episode, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.